Welcome to Food Friends, a podcast inspiring home cooks to try new dishes in the kitchen by sharing trusted recipes, tips, and friendship. Hi, I'm Sonia.
And I'm Carrie. We met in Los Angeles over 15 years ago as personal chefs and haven't stopped talking about food since. We're so glad you're here. Thanks for being our food friend.
If you enjoyed our podcast, please subscribe, leave us a review, and share this episode with friends. We love hearing from you, so follow us on Instagram or drop us a line at foodfriendspodcast.com.
Yes, we'd love to hear from you and your food friends. Happy cooking and eating.
Hi, Carrie. Hi, Victoria.
Hi.
Hi.
Victoria, we always start our conversations with guests by asking, what did you eat for lunch today? Or what are you planning to eat for lunch today?
I just finished a cookbook I was working on, and I had some leftover pickled jalapeno chimichurri, which I added to my avocado toast with a chopped up tomato.
That sounds delicious.
Amazing.
Wow.
No protein, and it was really, I'm telling you, this pickled jalapeno chimichurri has kind of changed my life. I've been putting it on everything.
How do you make pickled jalapeno chimichurri?
You take a jar of pickled jalapenos, you know, the kind you put on nachos, and you chop them up very finely with a lot of lemon zest, chopped up cilantro and chopped parsley, salt and pepper, and a little tiny bit of olive oil. I think that's all that was in it. Oh, I added the rind of a preserved lemon when I got it home because I thought that would be really good.
Yeah.
Good on fish. I put it on fish. I had it on eggs. I put it on fish. I'd have to make more.
Just having a good sauce stored in your fridge,
Right?
It's such a difference in the week. Whenever I do it, I'm always grateful I did.
I know.
Victoria, your journey has taken you through so many different adventures and experiences, from studying at the Le Cordon Bleu Culinary School to cooking at Smashbox Studios in Los Angeles to becoming one of the most influential food stylists in the world and collaborating with legends like Irving Penn, Anthony Bourdain, even Snoop Dogg. But I really sincerely urge everyone to sign up for your Substack, Delicious Tangents. You share incredible jaw-dropping stories from there. But
I just finished writing one for this week.
I cannot wait. I truly read it with my mouth open. I cannot believe she's sharing this. It makes me laugh. It makes me cry. It's really beautifully written.
Thank you.
Is there an artist or chef or author who's had the biggest impact on your own creative culinary life? And specifically, what did they give you permission to do?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm going to say I'm name dropping. So when I was starting out cooking in restaurants, I worked at a restaurant in West Hollywood called Trump's, no relation. And the chef would often get calls from customers who wanted him to cater small dinner parties. And he would turn them over to me. And I had like a million side hustles. And so this one time somebody called and they said, I have a friend and she and her husband just brought home a new baby. Mind that sentence structure. Just brought home their new baby. We'd like to have you cook them dinner. It's, Ruth and Michael. Ruth and Michael. And no
I think I know where this is going.
Okay, that is where it's going. Anyway, I walked into her house, and this was like the late 80s. I walked into her house, and there was a beautifully rustic cutting board that didn't slide out from underneath the counter like all the cutting boards we had. It was actually a cutting board. And on it was half a loaf of a sourdough boule. And I was so shocked that she had bread that was unwrapped. That was like, what? And that it was just sitting there with a little pot of butter at room temperature, uncovered on a beautiful little cutting board. It just blew my mind because I came from a family that, it was the 70s, the 60s and the 70s, and everything was packaged and wrapped, and my family was on a campaign of assimilation, so it was all American food. Just seeing that and that sensibility kind of opened up a whole world to me. And what did she give me permission to do?
Wait,
I
we
don't
have to
know.
say who Ruth is for those who don't know.
Oh, Ruth Reichl. Ruth Reichl. And at the time, she was the restaurant critic for the LA Times. So there I walk in and I went, well, what am I going to do? And I just paid a lot of attention to the baby. And I had come back from Cancun. I had taken a vacation to Cancun when it was just pyramids. And I had gotten stranded on an airstrip with this little old Mayan woman who didn't speak a word of English. She was making pollo pibil, wrapping chicken in banana leaves and steaming it. And I sat there and did that with her. And so I made that for her.
And before we interrupted to exclaim about Ruth Reichl, what did she give you permission to do? You were about to say.
Oh, you know what? She gave me permission to eat unwrapped food. I know that sounds crazy, but it really just opened my world to the idea that food could be ephemeral. It could be something that lives one day and is gone the next day. It doesn't have to last a week wrapped up. I began to think of food as something really special, as an art form. Maybe that was the beginning of me thinking of it as an art form rather than just nourishment. And by the way, I did not realize that leftovers was not the name of a meal that you ate before you went to bed. Every night, my mother would she'd bring all the leftovers out, put them on the table, and she'd go, come to the table, anyone who wants leftovers. And
Wow,
I
I've
can't
never heard of that.
No.
once she cooked the food, it was done. She didn't want to see it again. But she kept the food stuffs for a long time, either in the freezer or wrapped up in things. I don't know. But once she cooked it, it was done and gone. But before that, everything was in boxes and wrapped in plastic and things and refrigerator and freezer. And I don't even think we ever had fresh bread, honestly. Tell Ruth.
Victoria, you've worked on countless cookbooks and authored your own, including Sicily My Sweet. As a mentor and creative coach, are there baking books that you believe every serious home baker or culinary creative should spend time with? What do you think makes a cookbook timeless to you?
If the pages are full of stains because I've used them so much, what makes it timeless? What do I work out of? When I use a cookbook, it's still like Joy of Cooking, Marcella Hazan, something you come back to over and over because it doesn't rely on just an ingredient that just showed up yesterday. What do you I
Well,
don't know.
I think Marcella
Narrow it
Hazan.
down for me.
I think Marcella Hazan is such a good example. That's a book I give to almost everyone as a gift. If I
Including
think,
me.
oh, I gave it to you.
You
See, I
gave it
was
to me. Yes, you
Did
gave it to
you?
me.
because I think everyone should have it in their collection
Yeah,
because you need a good basic tomato sauce. You need a good ragu. Knowing how
right.
to make pasta is a great thing to have, but you don't know how need to know how to make pasta to enjoy that book. She has
Yeah,
so much simplicity and it always tastes good. And with the ingredients are so simple, you could find them at any time. For
right.
baking cookbooks, for me, there's a few that I keep reaching for that I just think the bakers are extraordinary. We've talked a million times about Nicole Recker's books, which I think
Mhm.
are just
Yeah,
so well written in terms of modern cookbooks. But I
right.
am wondering if there's one that really stands out to you in that category.
Um, Maida Heater. Is that even how you say it? Maida Heater, Maida. I don't even know. Never heard anybody say her name out loud. So whatever. That Rose Levy Berenbaum,
Yeah.
Carol Field, the Italian baker. These are all old ones.
Well, there's a reason we're asking you about baking because you launched Be Kneady, which is a monthly live gathering through your Substack for paid subscribers. So you gather at the full moon. It's a gathering centered around baking and baking being therapeutic. And I signed up and I've been wanting to ask you this since I signed up, which is why did you come up with this with Be Needy? And why baking? Why the full moon? And even more importantly, because I think I have a sense of why you created this, which is what happens when we bake in community, even virtually?
I have always baked as a healing practice, either for myself or for other people. And also have always been involved in astrology and being very conscious of the moon cycles. But, when the war in Ukraine broke out, I think that's what really started it. I tried to volunteer with World Central Kitchen to go because my son is adopted from Ukraine and he was 18 when the war started and he wanted to go fight. And I'm like, no, 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 not doing that. But let's contribute in another way. And so World Central Kitchen, I did a fundraiser for them on my Instagram. It raised a lot of money for them and decided I really wanted to do something person to person. It was right before Easter. And so I took my son, we went to Krakow, which was the nearest large town to the border, rented an Airbnb and baked 200 loaves of Easter bread and went and brought them to refugees. There was something so magical about, that was hand-to-hand combat. I mean, it was so magical to be able to have that effect on somebody else who is suffering. And just as much, because if somebody's not free, nobody's free. And it just all came through the baking. And also, I used to volunteer at a residential drug treatment center for women and children, women whose children had been taken away from them and were being reunified. And I baked with them, and I started a pie baking business with them. What would happen is when I would be baking with them, sometimes the counselors would come in and they would just sort of sit by and ask questions of the clients. And it turned out that much more was revealed during the process of them baking than there was on, just strictly counseling or therapy. And so I enrolled in a wellness counseling program at Cornell, which I'm finishing at the end of May. I wanted to add some substance and training to that therapeutic and ritual baking. So that's where it's all coming together. It will be in person starting in June after I've finished my course. But right now it's online. That's Be Kneady.
It's really cool.
Yeah.
That's really
Kneady, by the way.
Yes. Yeah, that's an important distinction.
Yes.
That's so powerful. Sonia and I have such high regard for what food stylists do. It's incredibly challenging work. And if you work as a food stylist, you have to have such a wide range of culinary expertise. And then, of course, you have to make all the food look fantastic. We're just wondering, with all of the experience cooking countless recipes, do you recall the first recipe that you ever baked, or a baking recipe that you've been making so long you can't remember when you began?
I remember everything, so that doesn't apply. But the very first thing I baked, well, it wasn't successful, but I decided I wanted to make sugar cookies. And so I went into my mom's Joy of Cooking, and all the sugar cookies had butter in them. And we didn't have butter. We had olive oil in the house, but we didn't have butter. And so I tried to make it with olive oil. Well, that didn't work out. So then I didn't know anything. I mean, maybe I was 7 years old. I was literally 7 or 8 at the most. And I didn't know what I was doing. And then I thought, well, maybe if I add some flour to it. So I made it again and I added flour, but then we didn't have enough flour. So I substituted baking powder with
Oh
it.
my gosh.
And then ended up with this huge volcanic salty thing. This crazy thing. That recipe, I tried it so many times. And then in the end, I had a friend down the street. She came over and she would taste it. And she's like, you just need to get a stick of butter. And it was just, oh, that's how easy it can be. And that's what I did. But the first really successful thing I made were the little silver dollar pancakes, because at age 8, someone gave me the Betty Crocker cookbook for boys and girls. And in there, they're called branded pancakes. And you can take a little bit, anybody can do this. And actually, it's kind of fun. You take a little bit of the batter and you put it in a squeeze bottle and you squeeze like a letter, A, B, C, D, F, G letter on there. Let it cook for 15 seconds, and then pour the rest of the batter over it. So when you turn it upside down, right side up, you see a letter because it's darker. It's been cooking longer. And so I made a series of those little ones for my mother, and the letters, although I mixed the pancakes up, spelled "Mommy is a witch." And
Wait,
then
how old are you? I need
8.
to know. You were 8. Okay.
8. I was 8. Also at age 8. No, I mean, anyway, so that's the first thing I remember.
That's like
really.
great food stylist training, to be making
Yes.
pancakes with letters at age 8.
And also, I didn't know that you could do that, I've
Yeah.
never heard of that.
You can make all kinds of designs. I've done it since then. I did it for like a Kate Spade ad or something. And I put the batter in a squeeze bottle and made cursive Ks, but I didn't remember to do it backwards. So when I made the stack, they were all like backwards Ks, and it didn't really work out. But but it was fun.
I'm also kind of loving how you're referencing these truly timeless cookbooks, The Joy of Cooking, the Betty Crocker cookbook, how foundational that is to so many of us, and often the cookbooks that you really find in kitchens all over the United States.
Yeah.
I also, my family is from Ukraine, actually. They immigrated in
Oh,
the late
really?
70s. Yeah, I was born here, but everyone else, including my brother, was born there. And just hearing about making those Easter breads in Ukraine, how much food is tied to memory.
Mm.
And those are going to be powerful memories for the people, for you. It already is a powerful
Oh,
memory. And also for the person who receives it, it's a powerful memory. And you're making it because there's this memory of that bread, right,
right.
at this time of year. So I'm curious if there's a recipe in your repertoire that you reach for when you're looking for that comfort, the reconnection or ritual, something that's equally emotionally meaningful to you as it is delicious.
Oh, yeah. My grandmother made these little cookies. I mean, it is the simplest dough. You form them into kind of little braids, and then they're sprinkled with sesame seeds. The recipe is in my book. But she always had a tin of those on the top of her refrigerator. Anytime there was a family event or someone
Mm.
died, she would bring those. It was very traditional. And then when she passed away, lived in LA. And I had visited her. I'd been out there about a month, 6 weeks before she passed, and she'd sent me home with some of the cookies, which in the ensuing few weeks before she died, I'd eaten all of them except just a couple. Then when she passed away, I put one of them in the freezer because I had this realization that I would never again taste that cookie. I'm going to cry. Taste that cookie made with her hands. And then we had a blackout and I forgot it was there and I
Oh,
dumped my whole freezer and refrigerator afterwards. But the memory was there. I kind of referred to that cookie over and over as I was learning to make them for myself to try to get them as close to hers as possible. And I was never able to really nail it. And then one day I asked my uncle and he goes, oh, well, she used really cheap Mazola oil to make them. That's why. Here I was using this, single origin, cold pressed, whatever. He goes, oh, no, 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 no. She used low grade, low quality ingredients and her hands. So yeah, that all the time. And I've taught my son how to make them too.
Victoria, you've already mentioned that you cooked for Ruth Reichl. And when Ruth was the editor in chief of Gourmet Magazine, that
Yeah.
was a really important part of my experience becoming a chef and loving food. I'm just curious, as someone who's worked at the highest levels of food publishing and media, and you look at the evolution of food storytelling from the glossiest magazines to now Substack and social media. What excites you most about what's happening right now? And what is something that you might welcome a return back to?
You know what's exciting me right now, like from last night, is I knew that the gourmet copyright had run out and that somebody else had taken it over. I had read about that. And then I found out it was somebody that I knew from Bon Appetit is one of the now owner writers, editors, whatever. So I went and read through some of their Substack last night. And one of the pillars of their brand of how they're treating it is that they do not want to put recipes in there that save you time or money, or it's not about that. It is about recipes that are worth making and worth taking the time to make. And I love that. I really love that. And that goes along with the way I think cookbooks have evolved. Cookbooks used to be problem solvers. What to make in 30 minutes, what to make for, $10, how to feed a crowd, all that stuff. And now I think at least in the past 10 years and even more recently, cookbooks have become the culinary arts have become an art form that you can enjoy passively. So if I'm buying a book about Picasso, it's not because I intend to start painting blue things in a cubist form. I'm enjoying it passively. I don't ever have to paint or be involved in that at all. And I think that cookbooks are moving in that direction where you can just enjoy them passively and they're beautiful to look at. So I am encouraged by that. that does excite me.
That's really an interesting perspective, a kind of turn away from a utilitarian or
Mm-hmm.
maximizing or efficiency point of view towards,
Right,
and
right.
especially since you're a culinary creative and you're looking at culinary things in terms of not just what you're cooking, but like
Right.
the design, the beauty, the experience of a meal or a world. And I think that's true too, even in your cookbook in Sicily, My Sweet, there's an element of it transports you there. What would it be like to be in Sicily surrounded by these things? I do love when cookbooks offer that. I also was struck by the new gourmet. And I mean, that take that just like we're not here for that. We're here for
Right, long form. That's so
long
well
form
said.
things that there's something to me that was interesting about it. I mean, we'll
Yeah.
see what happens. I think they're still in their very early days, but you've spoken at times about risk and instinct in your work. Was there a moment in your career where you had to trust your taste, literally or metaphorically, even when it went against the prevailing trend or even when it went against the client or your boss?
Yes, probably 40% of the time to this day. As a stylist, I have never been a person that has long-term clients. And by that I mean, I am the person that people call when they want to take risks with their brand, or they
Right.
want to try something new, or they want to take a walk on the wild side. That I'm the one that they call. So honestly, I would say maybe even 50% of the time, you will never see something that I do. And the other 50%, I will do it once and then it'll go to another stylist who will execute it over a period of time. So I learned really early on that if I'm going to be that person who almost always just takes risks, I'm going to have to live with the fact that only 50% of the time will I ever see my work, and that also I won't have a bank of repeat clients that I'm doing this work for over and over and over. So it's had its rewards, but also its challenges. The first thing, the one thing that two things changed it. Number one was I was trying to build my portfolio in New York. I'd moved to New York because in LA at that time, it was like mid 90s, the food styling was like putting sesame seeds on perfect hamburger buns for Burger King. And I realized that wasn't for me. So I moved to New York. That was a whole story. Moved to New York and I started building my conceptual portfolio because that's what I really wanted to do, beginning with a tomato that I got from the farmer's market that I stuck all kinds of pins and needles and pieces of thread in like it was a pin cushion.
Who was the tomato for?
No, it was just for
Just
my
like for
portfolio.
portfolio. Okay.
Yeah, because I wanted to do it because I had that idea conceptually. Anybody that has sewn knows that there's that tomato pin cushion. It's so iconic. So I would volunteer to work with magazines and I'll volunteer, but I want to do what I want to do. So there was a Belgian magazine and they said, okay, well, we have a 9-page story about Belgian food. And I'm like, I can only think of 3 pages worth of Belgian food. There's mussels, there's
Fries.
chocolate, there's frites that go with the mussels. I can't even really think of anything else. And so they had all these recipes that I knew were going to be really ugly. And they gave us a full page for each one. And I was working with Kenji Toma, who's Japanese and lived here for 20 years, but never really spoke English or let anybody knew he spoke English. So it was this kind of nonverbal thing. And we agreed that through a translator that I would just put the stuff in front of him and he would not look in the viewfinder. He would take a picture and the image would land wherever it happened to land in the frame. So I said, well, if you're going to do that, I'm going to not do the food. So there was white asparagus. So instead of showing perfect white asparagus, I showed the ends and the yellow rubber band that you discard when you snap the tops off. There was a quail recipe and I showed the feathers from a quail and the bones wrapped in a napkin off to the side. And the whole thing was like
Wow.
that.
What did the clients say when they got those images?
Oh, they were, to this day, those are amazing. And I'm saying this with no modesty whatsoever. Those are amazing images, as much for the way he photographed them as for what I did with the food. They were just kind of really magical images. And that's what started. And then the other one, I was doing a summer ice cream story for Bon Appetit, and there was a cover try. And it was a cherry ice cream on a cone with a chocolate magic shell kind of topping. And Up until then, all the ice cream was like perfect little balls of ice cream with the little beard, and everything was perfect, perfect, and cold and just perfect, like frozen in time. And it was the same photographer actually. And so we put it on camera and he shot it. And then I said, can we just leave it there until it starts to drip a little bit? And he was like, okay. And we sent that in and they ran it. To their credit, they ran it. And they got a lot of letters that said, how could you run something like, what kind of stylist do you have that shows it like dripping? And then the other half of the people, or maybe even more, said, that's so genius. You caught it right at the point where you just want to catch the drip, where it's just so cold. You can just feel the immediacy of that ice cream that you just want to reach out and grab it. And that's what I wanted. So those were the two big risks.
This story of dripping ice cream leads us into our next question, which is, what's the most unforgettable sweet baked good you've ever eaten? Something that changed your understanding of what a dessert could be.
Creme brulee. It wasn't baked. Well, it's baked. It's baked in a water bath.
Yeah.
It doesn't have flour in it, but it's baked. Okay, creme brulee and digestive biscuits.
British digestive
Yes,
biscuits that you buy
yes,
at the store.
yes.
Yes.
Because I went to the Cordon Bleu in London and I was really, really, really poor. So I would go to Fortnum and Mason and buy the China Rose tea. And then I would buy clotted cream and a sleeve of digestive biscuits. And that was my big treat. And there was something so simple about those digestive biscuits and the moment in time,
Yeah.
that it was just that moment in time when anyway, there was that. And then there was the creme brulee. I also wrote about this on my Substack. I had a gay boyfriend and his family, very, very waspy Pasadena upper crust. And I was like his beard. But anyway, we used to they belonged to the Valley Hunt Club, the country club. And so we would go there for dinner. And I remember all the food was beige and it was so delicate. None of it had any flavor at all. And so you'd have this like poached chicken breast with some kind of beige sauce. So this one day there was like a curry thing, whatever. And the dessert was creme brulee. And the first bite of that, I mean, it blew my mind. The texture of the hard sugar and then the cream that was just this perfect. It wasn't sweet, it was just sweet enough. And they had just put enough really good vanilla in there so that you could taste. I mean, the whole thing. There was nothing else edible in that entire place except that. Again, it was just how simplicity and texture and delicacy, it could just give you back so much with so little, really.
I just find it always so reassuring and wonderful that every food person I talk to, people who've worked at the highest level like yourself, always come back to these simple, incredible dishes. When you really ask them, what are your favorites? What are you craving? It's often something like that. I think there's like this expectation that you're going to say, croquembouche made with
Oh, no, no.
hazelnut, whatever,
Yeah.
praline. And or like something so extravagant, but that's not actually what people crave day to day. And that's not actually really what brings us comfort. That's fun as a party trick or
Right.
a sensational moment. So I actually really like digestive biscuits. It makes me think of my grandparents' house. They always had some kind of really basic European cookie to have the
Yes.
tea at the end of the meal, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But that also goes back to your question about cookbooks that you go back to over and over. And it's the cookbooks that aren't party tricks. It's the cookbooks that do teach you simplicity and texture and excellent ingredients and all of that. Those are the books that we come back to that become classics, just like creme brulee and digestive biscuits become classics. I know we have to keep selling cookbooks and we have to keep people interested and engaged, and everybody wants something different and new. So there will be all those party tricks, but the ones that resonate, I think, are the ones that are simple and textured and soulful.
Yeah. So, Victoria, when you're baking alone, when you're not on a job food styling, when you're not directing a campaign or teaching, what does your process look like? Is there music? Is it silence? Are you measuring carefully or improvising? In a sense, I'm kind of interested in what makes baking feel restorative to you personally.
Well, that's interesting because it depends on the emotions that I'm processing. So I have been challenged by something having to do with my son recently, and it brings strong emotions, not pleasant ones. And so I've been making pretzel shortbread cookies, and that involves taking pretzels and bashing them with a hammer or with a rolling pin until they become flour. And it involves whole grain spelt flour and salt and crunch, and it's creating something refined out of a very rough process and rough ingredients that somehow at the end becomes something refined and delicious. So if it's that kind of a emotion I'm processing or that kind of a feeling that I'm working through, it'll be reflected in the flavors and the textures and the processes of whatever it is that I'm baking. I often bake bread and enriched doughs with eggs and butter and more sugar than needs to be in there. That makes me feel comforted. That makes me feel safe. I'll bake something like that, and that will be in silence. Whereas I'll put on like salsa music or something. I'll put on Bad Bunny if I'm making those pretzel cookies, but it'll mostly be in silence if I'm kneading bread or I'm doing something that involves fine textures and delicate ingredients. It'll be very quiet. It's funny. Then I think of it. If the ingredients and the emotions are rough and textured and more natural, then the music is louder and I'll be barefoot. I'll wear slippers if I'm, yeah, it's so funny that,
That's so interesting.
yeah, it's a total experience. It's like a sensory experience with all the senses, really.
Victoria, we've already talked about this gathering you're having on the full moons called Be Kneady. And to me, Be Kneady is a little bit of a command. And so I'm just wondering, what do you hope people ultimately take away from your Be Kneady gatherings beyond recipes or techniques? Because I think it's really interesting what you just said about how you're baking and bashing these pretzels into flour and creating something that's more refined and beautiful.
Well, first of all, there is a zine that I created that goes along with the Be Kneady, which I have not sent out because I have not finished writing the recipes that go with each one. But each recipe reflects the full moon and the energy of each full moon. What we're baking reflects the energy that's created or the energy with which to work that moon gives us.
It reminds me too,
No.
like in Judaism, there's every new moon is a holiday.
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
you gather at each new moon and it's
Rosh
a Rosh Chodesh and it's a lunar calendar. And so every lunar cycle has its own energy. And I know there's names of all the full moons too, but I've often thought about what are the recipes that connect to the energy of a new moon. So I understand you're sort of saying, can we honor this moment? The same way you're like saying, can
Right,
I
right.
honor what's going on in my personal life by bashing some pretzels? Can I honor what's going on in terms of needing comfort by being in silence with some dough?
Mhm.
And then there's the collective cycles we're all experiencing.
Right, right. Well, and I think at this point in time, everybody is craving connection and we're craving affirmation that this isn't the end. I
Yeah.
think, it will be okay. This will pass. The bread will rise. We will get through whatever we're going through. There is something that I love about applying that to baking. Baking affirms that to me. When you bloom yeast, you're making life happen. You're giving life to these spores that then you can watch through your own hands something grow and develop and nourish other people, nourish minds and bodies and spirits. And I just think it's something that transcends boundaries or barriers, all kinds of baking that's involved in this, but in specifically bread, whether it's, Jamaican cocoa bread or brioche or Easter bread or whatever it is, giving something the warmth of your hands and bringing something to life is extremely life affirming. It's a soft landing that can affirm that whatever it is that we're moving through will get out on the other side.
Yeah, there's definitely power in breaking bread together as equal to baking bread together too.
Oh,
I think
yeah,
both
of
the
course.
creation and the sharing of it and the implied sharing of it when you're baking something. And
Yeah.
we always end on a very easy question, which is, Victoria, we have to ask, what do you eat on your birthday?
Oh, it's so sweet. It's next week. What I eat on my birthday. Okay. Which is also going to be my last supper if I have any say in the matter. And it's all white, crazy. It's creme brulee is obviously the last thing. There's a soft shell crab, there's sweetbreads, there's risotto. But for my birthday, I always either have a Lady M crepe cake, and I prefer the green tea one, or a very simple Italian cream cake, the kind with the yellow custard inside, the yellow, and the whipped cream on the outside. And one time, I had a friend group. We weren't particularly close, but it was a lot of fun. They had a birthday party for me and they made chocolate cake. And I ran into the bathroom crying because I realized that these people weren't close to me at all, because if they had been, they would know that it was the trashy, simple Italian cake that I wanted and not chocolate. So that's what I'll be having next week.
How wonderful.
We just
You.
really want to thank you for taking time
Yes.
and speaking with us. And it's just such a joy to hear your stories. We're going to link all your things in our show notes. We're going to send it to everyone on our Substack, foodfriendspodcast.substack.com. You can find Victoria's Delicious Tangents newsletter, Substack, which please sign up for. It's so good. But we just really want to thank you again. This is truly a delight.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you so much. Thank you, guys. It was wonderful meeting you.
So nice to meet you.
Thanks for being our food friend.
If you enjoyed our podcast, please subscribe, leave us a review, and share this episode with friends. We love hearing from you, so follow us on Instagram or drop us a line at foodfriendspodcast.com.
Yes, we'd love to hear from you and your food friends. Happy cooking and eating.